I'm Dr. Melissa Longo. Welcome to Everyday Rockstar Moms, where every episode I'll interview moms just like you who are rocking it in their homes, raising their children, managing their households, building their careers, working on their relationships, dealing with challenges, finding success, trying to find balance, and themselves along the way. Every episode you'll hear from women just like you of all ages and stages of motherhood, sharing their stories, life experiences, and leaving you with practical tips, ideas, and inspiration to help you rock your life. On today's episode, I'm chatting with Diane Meyer. Diane is a practicing chiropractor for the past 20 plus years. She's happily married and the mother of 4 healthy kids, ranging from 8 to 21 years of age. Today's interview was a real treat for me. I've known Diane professionally since before I graduated from chiropractic school. She's been one of my mentors, and I have learned so much from her clinically, learning how to run a practice, learning so many skills from her, but obviously never really getting a chance to talk to her as a mother, woman to woman. So today was a great experience for me, a whole new perspective that I really, really enjoyed. Diane talks about starting her practice with a young family. She also discusses the guilt she feels at times as a working mom, how she's able to let that go, and why she thinks there's no such thing as balance. We also talked about her supportive husband, how they keep their marriage strong, living with the occasional chaos of a family of 6 people, and how she turns to gratitude and her spiritual foundation every day to ground her and focus her energy. Diane has always had great wisdom for me and many other chiropractors professionally. Today, she shared some great wisdom about motherhood. Take a listen. Hi, Diane.
Hello, Melissa.
I am so excited that you're here with me today. I have to confess that when I made a list of people that I wanted to interview for this podcast, the first people that came to mind were certainly people that had been influential in my life. And you being a chiropractor, I met you long before I had graduated, when I was in, I think, my first or second year. And I remember so many conversations we had while I was in school and how much guidance you offered me in a professional category. But I'm not sure I've ever had a really great conversation with you as a mother to mother. So I'm really looking forward to your wisdom that you've got to share with us today.
Well, I'm excited to share it and very humbled as well. When you initially asked me, that was one of those, that's just such a nice thing for somebody to stop and just ask, what is your life and your journey like as a mother? Most of the time, it's always about the career and about the profession and what's going on as a doctor, but that mothering is a whole other half of me, and so it's nice to sit down and just talk about that and share my successes and some of my failures with other people, and in the hope that can inspire and help others.
Yeah, no doubt. As we were chatting about in the pre-chat, when you asked me why I started this, I think that we all see moms so often, whether in personal, friendships or, for you and I professionally as well, who are feeling like their failures or their struggles are they're only happening to them, right? And so often they're not. And if this conversation here can connect other women or make them feel a little less alone in some of their challenges, then, mission accomplished. Yeah.
I think as women, you have girlfriends or people who you're close to in your life, and you share conversations, and just these little pearls of wisdom get thrown out there. And, if we can catch these somehow and share them with everybody, that would be such a blessing.
Absolutely. I think the best place to start is for you to give our listeners sort of a snapshot about who you are, where you're at, your children's ages, a little bit about you right now.
Okay. Well, I started off as a young girl, really always wanting to help other people, wanting to make a difference in the world in that way. I felt it was in the health world somewhere, and ultimately that led me into being a chiropractor, which I graduated from in 1994. And I subsequently have 4 children. My eldest is 21, and then I have 18, and then I have 17 and an 8-year-old, and 3 girls and 1 boy. And I've been in practice pretty much since the children were born, so we're coming up to 22 years of practice. And I'm happily married to my hubby, Stu. And we have a lovely, wonderful life here in Oakville, where we we live and play and have a lot of fun together.
So the first thing that comes to mind is you graduated from chiropractic school and then started your practice, 4 months later?
Yes.
So starting a new business as well as starting that motherhood journey all at the same time. And then every year in your practice, you had to juggle your family life and your professional life. What's that been like for you?
Well, it's funny how whenever you have a baby, it just seems like a million other things happen at the same time. So every time we had a child, we were moving, or I was changing offices, or big life changes happened all in groups sort of for us. So it was, I won't say that it was easy, but I was really blessed to have a tremendous amount of support. My husband, he's a very active dad. I won't say he didn't protest about changing a diaper, but he was certainly right in there. And we had a lot of great help. Both our parents were involved in the upbringing of our kids, and they took care of the kids in the early years for us, for the first two. And then when number 3 came around, that was a little bit too challenging. My parents retired and they moved away, and my husband's family, they were just getting a little bit older and couldn't handle 3 little kids. So then we moved into a new plan where my husband was a stay-at-home dad. And that worked for us until, actually, then we had our next child, who was 8 years between my third. And so we sort of were out of that mode, and then we were right back in that mode. So yeah, we've had a lot of wonderful support, and a lot of crazy juggling, and just being able to manage everything and keep everything in an even keel.
That seems to just be the consistent thing that I hear is, there is juggling, but somehow you just make it work.
I think you just do. It's like when you have a child, you just think, how can I ever love someone more than my partner? And then you have this child, and I call it the love bubble, just kind of grows and envelops around them. And when you have your first, you think, oh my gosh, how could I ever love another one? Anything like this one? And then your love bubble just grows. So no matter what life seems to throw at you, you just manage to rise to the challenge and learn and discover new things about yourself, I think.
It's a journey being a mother.
For sure.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever felt that because you were juggling, all of your children as infants and toddlers and then school-age kids and teenagers, at the same time as your practice was growing and changing, have you ever felt like torn, like that you wanted to give more time to your family or more time to your practice?
I think if I was to put myself back in that time, I would say yes. You never want to miss any moment, any milestone, any precious word, the first, right? You don't want to miss any of those things with your kids. And I think when you choose to have a professional life, as well as being a mom, you're bound to have that happen. And I think I did have some guilt then, for sure, that I wasn't able to necessarily be there for everything. But my husband would videotape things and give me play-by-plays all the time throughout the day. So I did feel that connection there. But I won't say I didn't feel some guilt, for sure, at that time, which eventually I sort of, we talk a lot about balance and how everything has to be in balance. And I really struggled with that concept until I understood that there really is no such thing as balance. I mean, when you're really focusing on your practice or you're focusing on your professional life, in that time and in that moment, everything else is, you're not focusing on that. Or when you're with your kids, there are probably 10 million other things that you need to be doing for your career. Or when you're out doing something, you just decide to take a day trip with the kids when really there's 5 loads of laundry, and that part of the juggling isn't being done. So I've sort of given up on that balance concept and just seeing balance more in general, life terms, not sort of in the microcosm. And that was quite a revelation for me, just to let go of that. That really helped then I just started seeing life in bigger chunks. Maybe I wasn't there to give them breakfast this morning, but I'll be there tonight, or I'll be there tomorrow morning to give them a good breakfast, or whatever the situation might be.
What did that translate into sort of practically? Like, how did that realization change did it change your day-to-day, priorities as far as, your routines or anything like that?
No, it wasn't an external thing. It was very much an internal shift where I just became at ease in being someone who juggles a lot of plates, and sometimes one plate's up in the air and hitting the spotlight, and other times that plate will roll down and another plate will be up in the spotlight. So, and I stopped feeling guilty about whichever plate wasn't in the limelight, because they all can't be at the same time.
Right. So it's more about, when you say balance doesn't exist, there's no such thing. It's more about juggling all those plates at the exact same time. At any given time, you've got to give your attention to your children, or give your attention to your work or your partner or your own health.
Yes, and that is really critical, I think, is that attention. When you're in, for instance, practice, that's where you are. That's where your energy is. That's where your heart and soul go into that moment. When you're at home, you're with your kids. You're not looking at the computer. You're not texting. You're not doing, like, when you're with your kids, you're with your kids. Emergencies and things come up, of course, but I think that real focus and attention in the moment with where you are is so critical. And it really helps to be connected to what it is that you're doing in that time, and not have all those other things going around in your mind.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like that was a pivotal shift for you to make. Would there say there'd be times in your life that have really defined who you are as a mother, or who you are as a woman, which then affects how you mother your kids?
Probably one of the biggest, and I would say the first moments, a sort of a pivotal shift there for me was actually at the birth of my first child. I was someone who, I wanted a home birth, a water birth, no interventions. I wasn't comfortable going into a hospital setting. I knew that would not be a place where I would feel more relaxed and at ease. I wanted to be at home. But just having graduated, my husband and I were living with my parents, and that wasn't something that was within their comfort zone. That made my mother and my grandmother, who lived with us at the time, really very freaked out about me having a baby at home. They just couldn't understand why you wouldn't want to have it in a hospital in that kind of setting. So when it came time to being in labor, I was, in transition, pretty close to 7 centimeters or so, and the midwives were saying to me, Diane, we have to go. Like, if we're going to go, we have to go. And I remember this conflict inside of, I didn't want to go, but I didn't have my voice to answer. I just couldn't get it out. So I went inside and I kind of pretended like I didn't hear. I remember this so clearly, even though it was in the middle of labor. And I remember I had an out-of-body experience. I went out of my body. I was in the corner of the room, and I was watching. And I could see them asking me, Diane, if we really need to make a decision, we have to go. And I just wouldn't answer. And eventually, and everything was going great. It wasn't that there was an issue. It was just, if we're going to have this baby in the hospital, then we need to start transport. And I remember my husband actually had to, I won't say he smacked me, but he had to kind of bring me around a little bit, and I just remember looking at him and saying, nope, we're not going, we're staying here. And I remember looking over, and the midwives were smiling, and my mom sort of looked like deer in the headlights, but she was, okay, what do I do now? And my grandmother, she started to freak out. What am I going to do? But I think just that moment, I just really connected to who I was, what I wanted. This was my birth, my child. This was me being part of creation in the way that I wanted to. and that just gave me such strength, moving forward.
And that must fuel you working with so many expecting women in your practices and new moms expecting, the advice that you give them must come from that experience as well.
Oh, absolutely. One of the things that so many new moms, pregnant moms, will talk about is the terror and the fear of birth, and I just give them my perspective that for me it wasn't terrifying, it wasn't painful, it was intense, but it was the most beautiful moment. And as soon as the baby was born, I was ready to do it again. It was like, wow, that was awesome. How cool was that? So, they hear so many horror stories that it's I think refreshing for them to be able to hear another perspective.
I could not agree more. I see the same thing in the practice, and having had 2 home births as well, both would be, I would categorize as amazing experiences. Yeah, sure, labor is intense. There's a major event happening in in the woman's life, in the baby's life, but it doesn't have to be full of pain and anxiety and fear. It can be something completely different. But I think women need to be shown that that's a possibility.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
They see the Hollywood version, and they think that's what birth is supposed to be like, or they hear stories from their families or friends, right?
Yeah.
But there's a lot of different ways that you can have a baby.
Now, you talked about, even having, just in that situation, having a little bit of challenge from family members when you wanted a home birth and they weren't so keen about it. I'm sure you've had other moments with, your children over all these years that other people, whether they're family members or well-meaning strangers, have commented or criticized something that you've done as a mother. Have you anything stand out dramatically in your mind?
I can't say I had any huge issues. Probably one of the ones that I've had to defend quite a bit was our decision not to vaccinate our kids. And initially, that was a long conversation my husband and I had together. And when we came to our agreement, then we obviously shared it with our families. Mine took it fine. My mom wasn't actually all that keen about all the needles that I got. She actually shared with me, which I didn't know, that she stopped doing most vaccinations for me as well. But my husband's family had a bit of a harder time with it. So they were very open to learning, though, and understood where we were coming from and looked at some of our research, and that was fine. But then as the kids grew up, conversations happen with other parents, and it seems to be heating up a little bit again now in this real fear with other people that, your child isn't vaccinated, and what does that mean for my child, and is my child going to be in danger because of your decision not to vaccinate. So that probably would be the most challenging thing I had. I mean, we've always raised our kids pretty granola, organic and vitamins, and my kids have never had an antibiotic or a pain medication. It's just how we chose to raise them. So we're a little bit different, I think, than what the norm is. So we swim against the stream, but I think people, for the most part, look at those decisions as a curiosity and kind of interesting. So I can't say I had a lot of conflict with it.
No, so it sounds like, your response has just been to be informed and to be really congruent, you and your husband, about what your values were and what decisions you wanted to make for your family. And as long as you two were solid about that, it gave you a lot of strength against anyone else who challenged you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it all comes from your philosophy. What are your morals? What are your values? Why do you make those decisions that you do? If you're really grounded in what that kernel, that essence is, then, we choose not to judge other people and ask that they don't judge us either. These are our decisions, and as I said, the proof is in our 4 bouncing, beautiful, healthy, vibrant kids.
Have you been influenced heavily by other people positively, though? Like if you were to say who your role models will be as a mother, if you had to think about it, anyone that pops to mind, or several people?
Well, for sure, you're my own mother. And my grandmother. I was raised by both of these incredible women. My grandmother came over when I was a baby, and my mom worked at the time. So, the two of them were huge female influences. And my grandmother was one of the most kindest, gentle, loving souls. She planted the seeds of my spirituality. She was quite a religious woman and very spiritual, and we had long conversations. Do you know when you're little, you're trying to avoid going to bed? Mm-hmm. I would always pop these philosophical questions because I knew we'd get a good long chat out of them, but I learned incredible amounts from my grandmother. And my mom was very much our rock. She's very strong. She speaks her mind. She knows exactly where you're at with my mom whenever you're with her. If she doesn't like the dress you're wearing, you're going to know about it whether you want to or not. So, between these two really strong and powerful women, they were incredible role models for me. And they were just both very, very loving. You knew that they would do anything to support you and care for you, and that's sort of how I carried on with my kids in practice, and just loving.
It sounds like you're very lucky to have those two ladies in your life.
I'm very blessed, very blessed.
So looking at the age of your kids, you've got 8-year-old up to 21-year-old. Would you say there are any parenting stages that were more challenging for you, or do any times as a mom stick out in your mind as being particularly difficult?
I would say, without a doubt, the hardest time is that you're not getting enough sleep time.
Right,
They're
so
really
the early days.
Oh my gosh, that was just so difficult. Sleep was like contraband between my husband and I. We were together for 7 years and never fought, never argued. We were just a very cohesive, wonderful, flowing couple. And then we had our first baby, and she slept for 15, 20 minutes, and she was good to go for 2-3 hours all day, all night. And she did this for a number of years. It was really rough. And nowadays we've got these sleep coaches and other great resources to be able to use to help. But at that time, there was a number of factors that played into that, but it was really rough. Not getting enough sleep, like you just don't know what your name is. And I remember, that was just survival mode. And I remember being conscious of not really being able to enjoy this as much as I could have if I would have just felt human, right? So that I would say was my most challenging time for sure. One of the most sort of surprising things I found was I was always a little bit worried about the teenage years. People are always like, oh my God, when they're teenagers, they're going to be so rough, and girls are this and boys are that. And I was so pleasantly surprised by the teenage times. They were not nearly as terrifying as what people can lead you up to thinking they are. As long as you have a good communication with your kids, and they still need you so much. They still need your time. They need your energy. They need one-on-one. You maybe not as physical as when they're little, but there's just so much turmoil going on in their lives now that to be there for them at that time is just a different level of connection. And that was, I think, a pleasant surprise for me, how easy the teenage years actually really were.
That's good for me to hear.
Yeah. Yes, you're going to be great. It's going to be amazing.
My oldest is, he's 13 now, but I think that he's awesome. Like, he has his moments where he's moody and grumpy, but so do all of us. And I don't know if it's hormone, induced, or just, a day. Everyone has days where they're off, right? And I think overall he's doing well. And I think some of the comments I've had on the podcast too about the teenage years is it's all how you frame it. Right. So if you can still be, as you said, present with your kids and be communicating with them and be there for them, even though they want us a little bit less, they need us there in different ways.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah.
They like to pretend that they don't need us so much, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The sleep, your comment about the sleep though, I mean, it's so common for so many women to be struggling with the lack of sleep. And as you said, yeah, lots of support these days for sleep, but I think our bodies get fairly well at adapting though too. I mean, I just can remind you, I came to visit you at your clinic, I'm sure, one time, and I still thought you were like this goddess chiropractic woman. I was taking everything in, and you were totally in your element with everyone that was in there. And then we had a break, and you're like, I barely slept last night. I think my youngest was up all night. And
yeah.
So you probably, pulled it off fairly well.
Yeah. Well, when you're in the moment, you're working with other people, and I get to live so many of my passions every day. So I was in my groove and loving what I was doing, and you just draw from the universe with energy when you need it for that. But when you stop and slow down, I was like, whoa, I think I need to have a little nap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, you see a lot of young moms in your practice. What would be one of the number one pieces of advice that you would give them if it comes up?
Oh, I know it's so cliche, but I would say to just chew and relish every single moment that you can. Don't live in the past. Don't portray into the future. Just be so thankful and grateful for the blessings that you have right in front of you in the moment. And I know everybody, you hear about this all the time, but I remember from having my 3 small ones so close together and being in that survival mode that we talked about, it was a lot harder to be able to enjoy that than with my youngest right now, who's 8. I mean, I'm just soaking in every single little moment of her and appreciating it. So, once I'm in the unique situation where I've already had a few, and I can see how fast time goes and how the stages are so quick, and life can just kind of roll you along and push you, but you really need to just kind of stop and just, love the mess and love when you've got dishes all over the place. It's like, how awesome that we had this great messy meal. How blessed are we that we had this food? And when there's laundry, wow, look at all the amazing clothes that we get to wear. I know it kind of sounds crazy, but it can make you appreciate it instead of it infuriating you, and it helps you to sort of appreciate every single precious second.
Yeah, I would say that my reminder is when my boys are around, and they're loud sometimes, right? And they're throwing, I have to remind them, don't throw the basketball in the house, but then when they're not here and it's so quiet, it just feels wrong sometimes right now. So it's making peace with all the dynamic, ever-changing world that being a mother is in our households.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when do you feel that you are at your peak? Like, are there things that you would do lifestyle-wise that help you be your best every day, as a mom, as in practice?
I think I'm a pretty spiritual person, so I think it's really making sure that I have that focus and that connection. So one of the things that I'm very conscious of doing is being in a state of gratitude, and that's a huge thing for me. I'm also very much a type A control freak kind of person. I don't know if it's my German heritage or what it is, but maybe it's my firstborn status, but I like to have things a certain way. And when you have 4 kids in the house, like, the mess that I was just describing and the dishes, like, those are things that could easily flip a switch for me. So by really putting myself in this position of gratitude, and as I said, look at things as blessings, I routinely, when I leave the office, I would drive home and be thinking about all of the blessings that I had. And usually I'm almost at a point of tears by the time I get home. And when you come home and you just see all this mess and you see all this stuff going on, it doesn't matter because your heart is just so open. So really being conscious of being in a state of gratitude has been an amazing tool for me.
And it also sounds like you are making the most of a commute, right? And finding the times
multitasking, right?
Well, but what a gift that you're giving to your family when you get home and you've been spending that driving time doing something so positive. I only bring that up because so many moms are trying to find the time to exercise, trying to find the time to meditate or be, grateful or connect with their friends. And you just got to fit it in where you can sometimes in your day, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I do a lot of my stretching in the morning when I'm just brushing my teeth and doing my hair. I've got my leg up on the counter.
That's what I stretch
stretching out my hamstrings. Yeah.
So can we talk a little bit about your happy marriage? You've had a ton of kids. Your husband stayed at home for part. He's changed his career. You've gone through lots of different things in your marriage together. What would have been some of your keys for keeping your marriage alive and healthy?
Yeah, I was looking at this question, and I think I would have to boil it down to the 3 C's. Comedy is one. Laughter, lots and lots of laughter. Try to find things, when your husband does things that just kind of drive you crazy, like roll up their socks in little balls, right? So you could lose your mind, or you could just start throwing them at him, or you could put, I decorate his bed and turn his socks into like little flower shapes. These stupid things just to bring laughter to the situation, because that just diffuses any of the ego and the anger and all of the rest of the stuff that's around it. So comedy is one. Communication, we talked a little bit about that already, is another one. Just always talking. If something's bothering you, never shut down. We never go to bed angry or without a conversation made over a topic. And communication can be in many different ways. It can be in just a look. It can be in a conversation. It can be in a written note. We still stuff notes into our lunch pails or our lunch bags together of little love notes, or it will be don't forget to do this, or whatever it is. So communication's really key. Sometimes finding the time to communicate alone in my house is a really big challenge. So the bathroom has sort of been a place where we will hide to if we need to talk about something that we need to clarify or be a cohesive unit together, away from the kids. So communication is another aspect, and then I think the last one would be contact. We're a pretty physical family, and I think that's part of why chiropractic is such a natural extension of me. We're always hugging each other and kissing each other, and tickle fights, and between my husband and I, it's a hug, it's a squeeze, it's a handhold, it's a peck on the cheek. It's sometimes he ruffles my hair, it drives me crazy, but it's a loving thing, and whatever it is. Just always that physical contact, just connecting again that, we are together.
The 3 C's, yeah. I like it.
My 3 C's.
I like it. Do you have anything that inspires you on a daily basis as far as, we've talked about people that have influenced you and passions that you have and your gratitude and being conscious, but do you have a slogan or a phrase or anything that grounds you and inspires you?
There isn't one that really pops out into my mind. There isn't one thing specifically that I can say. I've probably interwoven a few different ones just in the conversation that we've had. I guess don't sweat the small stuff is part of what we talked about.
Yeah.
And and just not judging lest ye be judged would be another big one. Mm-hmm. I remember remember the times before you were a mom and you'd look at other families, and you'd look at other women who were maybe, looked a little disheveled, and their kids had maybe dirty clothes, or they had their noses running or whatever it was. And I made judgments about that. Absolutely, I did. I wasn't going to raise my kids like that. I would certainly be much more put together. My kids are never going to fight. They're going to be loving and kind and gentle with each other always, right? And then you become a mom and you think, oh my gosh, how could I have put that judgment on other people? I had no idea. And so, that is a big thing that I aspire to as well, is to never judge another for the choices that they make, their whatever's going on in their life, and whether it impacts me negatively either. Not to judge. That's been very powerful for me.
Mm-hmm. It is very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Has motherhood been what you thought it would be?
Oh my gosh, it's been so much more than I could have ever anticipated. I think any mom, when they really stop and look at what they've created in their kids, right? It's just, if you really stop and you really look at them, and it's like, wow, that I made that. That's just so. When do we ever get to be so close to being the creator as we are when we look at our children? Yeah, I would say that's a constant reminder for me.
Yeah, I had this weird feeling about a week ago. My son brought home his grad photos. He's graduating grade 8 this year. And I stopped and I looked at the photo, and it was just like, wow, look at what I've accomplished. And more than anything else in my life that I've accomplished, I looked at that photo and felt satisfied and felt like, wow, he's such a great kid. And you just get that. My heart right now, as I'm talking about it, is just filling up, because I watch him, who he's becoming, and I'm so lucky that I got to be part of shaping his whole life experience so far.
Mm-hmm. You learn so much about yourself, and they are such a blessing to you. And then you get to bring this blessing out into the world, and let them be able to change and create other amazing things in this world. It's such a humbling thing.
Humbling is a great way to look at it, because as we saw, so many times the kids are teaching us things about ourselves, and we're learning just as much as they're learning as time goes on.
Yeah, it's great when one of your momisms come back to hit you, right? Mom, you said.
Yeah, my favorite is when the kids at the end of the day, they've been doing stuff, and then they sit down. I'm like, oh, and they're like, oh, it feels good to sit down. And then they look at me, they go, now I know how you must feel. Because they realize that I haven't, since they got home from school, I haven't really sat down yet.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of comedy in our house, I think, too, just by the nature of daily life, if you choose to see it that way.
Mm-hmm. It's so much more fun if you can laugh at it.
Yeah.
Or laugh with it, perhaps.
Yeah, sometimes it's a little bit of both, right?
Yes, that's true. That's
well,
true.
I have enjoyed this so much. My heart is really full now, thinking about those last few conversations we had. Any last, parting thoughts you have for the moms that are listening?
The journey is such an amazing one, right from the moment that you start thinking about, hey, you know what, I might want to become a parent. And from the time that your tummy starts to grow, and people kind of look at you a little bit differently, and I noticed in particular some of the older men would kind of smile when they saw you walking by. Motherhood is just such a gift to not only ourselves but to the rest of the world, and we just get so caught up in the everyday things that really warp our perspective on what is important. And so, we've sort of touched on it so many times over the conversation, but really I think the most important thing I can pass along would be to just to be present and to look for all the little little miracles in every little thing, whether it's in your child bringing home, an art piece that they worked on so hard, or, heck, maybe your kid made their bed one day. Like, how amazing is that? Look for those things to celebrate and just really enjoy the miracle of the process.
Absolutely. It's making me think of when I go upstairs sometimes, and I find that one of my boys has folded the clothes and folded my clothes too, right? Which is even more endearing because they need to usually be refolded. But it's just like, oh, that small moment of they cared, right? They did something thoughtful towards me.
Yes.
So it's finding the symbolism in that rather than, oh my gosh, I got to fold them again myself. It's, I've taken photos of them, and I've taken photos of the little, Lego figure battles that happen around my house in places I don't expect. And, you step on a car, you step on, you drive them all over the place. And, but it's special. And as you watch them grow, and I'm sure you've had this with your girls, and your son being teenagers, like it goes by so fast.
Again, that's so cliche, but it is so the truth. Before I have a 21-year-old girl. I can't believe that. It feels like, she was only born maybe 8-10 years ago. Yeah. And then they become these other grown women, and you start having these conversations about being mothers with them. That's pretty surreal.
Well, I can't think of anyone better to guide them on that journey than you. So.
Oh, thank you. I feel very blessed. Originally, my husband and I were told we'd never have children. So this was an unexpected, wonderful thing that we were able to go through.
Wow. From being told you were going to struggle with fertility to having 4 beautiful children.
Mm-hmm. Each of us individually were told decide that we would likely never have kids. So we thought together we would never have children. And oh my gosh, we pined about that for quite a while, and then, alas, there we have. There was our first. While I was still in chiropractic school, so we were, looking back and remembering the fear and the sadness that we had on the possibilities of not being able to be parents to being on the other end of 4 beautiful, healthy, amazing kids has, it's, how do you describe it?
Yeah. You just have to live through it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, thanks so much for your time, Diane, and we'll look forward to catching up again sometime soon.
Yes, thank you for the wonderful conversation. I feel like I got to go home and squeeze them all now.
I know. That's what I'm thinking the same thing. There you have it, a great story today from a mom who rocks. I hope you enjoyed today's show. Be sure to head on over to iTunes and subscribe to the podcast so that you don't miss out on any future episodes. When you do that, I'll be sending you a copy of my top 10 tips for moms. These are some of my personal practical strategies I believe that as women we can all benefit from and help us be emotionally and physically as healthy as we can be. When you're also there on iTunes, I would also love it if you left a review. It's really important to leave some reviews because that helps other people find the podcast, and it helps inspire them to listen and potentially gain some insight from the podcast. Tell other moms that you know would benefit from this show, or most certainly nominate them and let me know who you think I should be interviewing. I'd love for you to connect with us on Facebook as well. Head on over to Everyday Rockstar Mom and join our community there. Thanks so much for joining us today. We'll see you next time.